Welcome back. You've just tuned into Women's AM this morning. I'm joined by Sister Nusrat, our new panelist, Sister Mahbooba, and our special guest today is Sister Hodan Yusuf. So, Assalamu alaikum. Sister Hodan Yusuf, it's good to have you back on the show. Now, we all know you're a great journalist, but tell us more about your mediation side of your lifestyle.
Yes, I'm a mediator as well. A few years back, I trained as a mediator and a facilitator and trainer in mediation, and it's actually something that I found one of the most valuable things I went and studied, because it helps you, and we're talking about love and especially in relationships today especially, so it's really important to look at the health of our relationships, the relationships we have with our children, our families, and in particular our personal relationships. And this is now taking off, alhamdulillah. Mediation is becoming more widely known, simply because legal costs are very high when it comes to relationships. It's cheaper a lot of the time to mediate your way in a relationship or even out of a relationship rather than go to the court. So it's a really valuable way of sitting down and talking about your options, basically.
Well, that's the key thing, communication,
Yes.
isn't it? I think a lot of things get lost in miscommunications between relationships, and maybe you take advantage of each other because you've been together so long.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get cracking and go straight to Have You, where we will be discussing love in Islam. We spend so much time looking for our perfect partner, but do we think about what comes next? When choosing someone to share our lives with, do we consider the loving, romantic side of this union? While it's important, sisters, it's not a business transaction. Love between the husband and wife is very important and something very much that is encouraged in Islam. But how do you go about it, as it sometimes can be tricky after couples get into the routine of life? Well, that's our discussion for today. As always, this is a live discussion with the sisters on the panel, and we'd love to know what you think. Please do call the studio to put your comments or questions to the panel. The number is on your screens right now, or you can tweet us on @IslamChannel, #115. Hodan Yusuf, I'm going to start with you, seeing as you're my favourite guest today. In what ways does what area does love manifest itself in Islam?
Okay, well, the first thing is, I know the focus today is on relationships, but not everyone is going to want a relationship in their life. Not everyone's going to end up in a relationship in their life, but you are, in terms of with you know, a personal, intimate relationship with your spouse as such. But every single person has a relationship with themselves, in the sense that, you know, we talked about, I was on last few days ago talking about self-worth, and it's really important to know who you are and appreciate the things that you've been granted, but most importantly, where did it come from? And as Muslims in particular, our relationship with Allah is the prime relationship. That's the one that you begin your life with and continue your life with and end your life with. So that's really a relationship that, if you get that right, it helps you answer and deal with all the other relationships that we all have in our, you know, lives.
That's very true. But you know, when you're getting to know yourself, and that's really, really important. I think at university, you know, when we're studying, we find ourselves, know what we want and what we don't want. But finding Mr. Right can sometimes feel like a clinical process in Islam, because obviously you've got restrictions on meeting and things. You know, how can you bring the sort of love and affection into all of this when you're trying to look for Mr. Right?
I think it depends on like how you define romance.
Okay.
And some people define it as roses and petals, which is all good, but you know, if that's what you're going to be asking for, looking for, that's all you're going to expect, that's all you're going to get. But romance in Islam is much deeper than that, and it's actually much more beautiful than that. And it's like the beauty of romance, the fact that in Islam is that kind of connection that you have with your husband through Allah. And that makes the relationship not just a marriage, but also a companionship. And that is the most deepest of relationships that that exist. So so what do you look for? Personally, from my experience, when I was looking for my husband, the kind of questions that I asked was, the kind of things I wanted to find out was whether he was kind, whether he was respectful. You know, these were the qualities that I was looking for, and his love towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because, you know, if he has this attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I know that he will treat me well, because Islam teaches men to treat their wives well.
So it's the key questions is the most important thing, scenario questions. Yeah. Sister Hodan, what do you think?
I agree, absolutely, that picking Mr. Right is all about picking the qualities that are right for you in the first place, because, as you know, especially in the sort of Muslim community, a lot of the time you hear, well, he's Muslim, he's practicing. You know, there's this word, whatever it means. Whatever it means, he's practicing, therefore, that's not enough. Everyone is practicing. As a Muslim, by definition, it's, you know, you're Muslim, you fast, you pray, etc. You are practicing. but not every single Muslim on the face of the earth, when you go to Hajj, not every single man there is a potential partner, you know, because that's so you need to find the qualities that matter to you, and be discerning. Look, if you have mercy, love, and also I would advise, if you find somebody, and a lot of us maybe, you know, we weren't so discerning at times, and especially a few years back. If you find qualities that you think, I can't live with this guy is actually quite rude to his mum, or he's quite, you know, I've noticed certain things. There's no harm in you stopping and saying, actually, I have enough self-worth to say that I don't want to live with that for the rest of my life. I can't necessarily change him and give him a personality transplant once we get married. So if that's a value that it doesn't, you know, in sync with me and what I'm looking for, stop. Don't sell yourself short.
That's the key thing. I think sometimes think, oh, you know, in a few years' time he'll change or she'll change. You need to marry on what they are currently. So that's a big thing.
And I think sometimes as well, we tend to be sometimes prisoners of other people's expectations and our preconceived notions about what we want of people. And we have to realise that you can't change people. You can't just also rely on things like hearsay or aesthetics to kind of get you through, because at the end of the day, the core person is not the outside, it's the in.
Well, after finding Mr. Right, first year of marriage, now we all hear it's a honeymoon period and it's all amazing, but in reality, the first year of marriage is very different. I mean, as a woman, as a man, you're living together. It's difficult, wouldn't you say? How do you think people should deal with that first year of marriage?
Listen, this is a family show and it's before 9 o'clock, so I need to be careful what I advise. But it's really important to understand that you're bringing yourself and everything you were raised with. You're an adult, and you are who you are, and he's an adult, and he's bringing himself the way he was raised in his environment. And it's the word compromise. It's really, really important. It sounds, you know, so cliche, but in actual fact, it means if he's used to this way of living, and if that's how he is, provided you've already done the first step correctly, that you've, you know, the core values are that you share. In terms of personality differences, you need to start learning about each other and not suddenly doing the whole putting on a face until the honeymoon hits, because a lot of people do that, and then they suddenly wake up a month or two later with this monster in their house who they didn't know, you know, they'd married into. So it's really important to be honest and be upfront with each other in the beginning. And before kids come along, that's the time to get to know each other.
We have a caller, a brother from Dagenham. Assalamu alaikum, brother. What's your comment or question?
Mashallah, I was just listening to the last sister, mashallah. I think she's right. You know, both partners, I think, need to be understanding. Because I'm not married, not yet. Inshallah, later on. But what I've seen is, me and my friends, is when we try to look for sisters, sometimes it's like, we understand the women's rights, we want to give them everything, we want to do everything we can for them, but it's like, it don't work the other way around. And sometimes sisters don't be understanding, and not everyone, I'm not saying every sister, I'm just saying that from our experience, me and my friends, like, I think sometimes sisters, like, we as men, we know it's hard for women, like, especially in London, how it's very difficult, and we try to, like, we have that mindset, like, even we read that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, like, he gave the advice to his son on the wedding night. He gave, like, 10 advices, I think it was. Yeah. And I messaged that to my mate as well, and I said, listen, if we're going to get married, we need to make sure we follow this as well. So we're helping each other, but then we find it hard sometimes with the women's demands, and, like, we're not loaded boys, and we're struggling to get through. But I think sometimes, like you said, I think women and both we need to be understanding, and it's not always about the person's right, it's about trying to give more than taking.
Well, Masha, thank you for your comments, brother. It's very sweet of you. Sister Hodan, maybe if you could tackle this one.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Jazakallah khair, brothers, for the call. And I'm quite touched, actually, hearing that there's brothers who... hearing, you know, young brothers ringing up and saying that they want to give, and they want to be as generous and as giving of themselves, of their love, of their, you know, as possible. So to sisters, and I think it's important. This is why we're having this show. This is Women's AM. We are having this conversation amongst ourselves, and in the Muslim community, amongst women, we are talking about this. And you know, and when people come to me for mediation and advice, I say the same thing. It is not just about what a man can do for you. It's, first of all, be your own woman and know, you know, yourself, and also, yeah, give. I mean, it is a two-way street. Absolutely is a two-way street. There's no way you're going to build love if you're just someone who just takes and wants, you know, if I wanted a man who paid the bills and just was an ATM machine, I could have been at home. My dad paid the bills. You know, my dad looked after me. So it's not, you're not going to get married to someone someone who can buy you designer or whatever. No, it's about having a partner in life that you go through life with and that you get closer and closer, and you're prepared for a lot of tests, and you love each other for the sake of Allah and for the sake of, everything else, the other qualities that you both exchange and share. It's really important, and I agree with him, and I think that's kind of what we're trying to do, is to have that conversation with
It's very
ourselves.
true. I think it's very true. You need to self-reflect and then try and make compromises where you can, know what you want from life. That's the key thing. So far, the discussion has been very informative. We'll be back after a short break now, but just before we go, a reminder on this week's competition.
This week on Women's AM.